You know, the next technological leap may not be there where you think it is. But I know one for sure. It's gonna be something that deals with our capacity to survive as a species and as humanity. Let me explain. Hi, I'm Markku Wilenius, the traveling futurist. You know, when digital revolution started somewhere in the 1970s, it started with a quite sort of humble beginning. There was not a big fuss about it. It's just emerged. And when you got to the 19s and the 2000s, it started to become a mainstream. And today we cannot think of society without internet, without personal computers, without mobile phones and so forth. In the same way, all the previous technological ways has also emerged. Take cars, for instance. Cars were invented back in the late 18th century, but it took a couple of good decades before it started to be something that was approaching mainstream, which essentially started to take place in the 1930s, but essentially happened after the Second World War, in the 1950s and so forth. So that also took a while. What we can see from here is that technology takes time to mature before it becomes a real big thing to deal with. Our next revolution. My way of thinking is that these technological revolutions happen in 40 to 60 year cycles. And we have just been about 10 years in the last of these cycles, which is the sixth cycle, sixth wave after our industrial revolution. Now, this wave is describes something that I call intelligent technologies. When it comes to the technology aspect, which is what we are talking about here. So what do I mean by intelligent technologies? I mean all kinds of technologies that help us to increase the resource efficiency. So if you think about the artificial intelligence, for instance, what does artificial intelligence actually do? Well, what it does is that it creates a possibility for different gadgets and machines to interact and communicate, but also it creates opportunity to interact with the human being and learn from that. So these intelligent machines can become of something that help us to do our human task in a much more efficient way. Just think about the pandemic and what did it bring to us? Essentially, we learned a new way of running our meetings, different even conferences, different kinds of ways how we can actually, over the space, do together things that before we thought is either difficult or impossible. In terms of how we are using our resources, also this one was a big leap towards resource efficiency. Now, the challenge in our society by and far is that we are currently very low on resource efficiency. And that has become a real big problem in our society and created the problems unlike we have seen never before, like climate change, deforestation, loss of the species, loss of equality in our societies as well. Now, we try to tackle with these technologies that we have built, and there are of course much more to that. There is also blockchain, which is coming, which is going to be helping our financial system to be more transparent and more trustworthy. And a lot of other technologies that help us to build a type of a society where bits are traveling instead of people, and the intelligence that we are gathering is a collective intelligence. But when it comes to the future, this is not what we're talking about. This is what we are living currently now. We already have started that journey. And this journey is going to take us somewhere into the middle of this century. And with that, we're also going to have a new energy technologies, because energy and how do we produce energy has become a big issue and a problem. If not before, then at least this crisis in Ukraine has proved to us that leaning on these old sources of energy, the type of the sources that we have been using already over the century and more, is becoming a very old-fashioned way how we actually produce our energy here on Earth. And it's time to leap into something else. And this something else has been coming up already for some time ago. This new thrust or wave into energy technologies actually started some 20 years ago to take a real off from the ground. And today we are somewhere, but of course not far enough. They have pretty much come to the market competitive, and the next 10 years will show how they actually penetrate into the market in a very different way. Different forms of solar technologies, PVs, new type of solar power sources, technologies, wind, geothermal energy, and wave energy, and actually so much more. And all these kind of energy technologies are going to come and replace in the near future the energy sources that we're currently using, which is mainly fossil fuels. 80% of the world energy is produced by fossil fuels, and even electricity, 2/3 of our electricity on the worldwide basis is produced by the fossil fuels. So we have a long way to go, but we have started already that journey. So what I'm talking about, the next technological leap, actually goes beyond these technologies that I have been talking about here. Then we are moving something even much more exciting. We are moving into the bio age. So what do I mean by bio age? There are a couple of aspects of bio age that I want now to propose. The first aspect is that if you think about algae are those type of plants that lives all around. A lot of them are in the seas, but they are actually everywhere. Algae are the most complex organisms in nature. And because they are so complex, they have a huge amount of properties that we actually know very little about. It has been estimated that we only know a couple of percentages of that 100% of potential properties that these organisms have. But we already know they have a huge potential when it comes to how to make food for the future, how to make medicines for the future, how to make materials for the future. And you know what is so different when we think about the non-renewable mineral resources that we have? We cannot produce ourselves more of those. But in terms of the algae, yes, we can grow them because they are natural organic organisms. We can grow them as much as we want. So, and they know also how to self-produce if we make the conditions for them. That's the endless source of material, of the raw material that we need. And there is a lot of research going on all around the world about what can be made of the algae in the future. Hugely interesting stuff. The second very, very interesting aspect of bioage or bioeconomy or biosocieties is of course our forests. We have forests all around the world. Here in Finland we have about 70% of the coverage of the forest of the whole country. So there is a lot there. And there is also a lot of that type of the research that looks beyond how we have been using forest up until today, which is that we make timber, we make paper, we make board, we make other types of material. But in the future, we might make our clothes with them. We might make a number of other things. We can build materials that are much better than concrete that we are currently using for our houses. And you know what? We have plenty of space on this earth that we don't use for growing the forest. Instead, what's happening is that we are actually cutting the existing forest on a rather rapid rate. So we need to turn this around and see that the forests are our true resources. But also within the forest and within, for instance, with conifer trees, there are a lot of medical properties also, because they are very good in defending themselves and healing themselves if they need to be. And there is a lot of interesting research that points out that actually those healing properties, we could sort of transplant them into our medicines. Again, something that we need to be dealing, particularly in times when the health issues and problems have become such a fundamental problem of our society. If you look at the public budgets of a lot of countries, including mine here in Finland, the biggest part of that public budget goes to the health costs. So, and we learned during the pandemic how critical the good health is for the people, and how the fact that there are diseases that are spreading among the population can be critical to the performance and the functionality of the society. And this was probably not the last pandemic. So we need to be learning. So that's the second aspect of the bio-age. The third aspect of the bio-age is that actually all our technology that we have been building, you know, the engines that we use in our cars or our vessels on the sea or in our buildings. In the future, all that technology will look more like they mimic the nature, because in nature there is a huge amount of intelligence how the processes inside the nature works, and we have not been clever enough to learn from that. So this mimicking the nature and look how the nature actually works and applying that to our society, to our technology, will be something that will be kind of an endless source of innovation once we really tap to that source. The fourth aspect of bio-age comes from agriculture. Now, agriculture is the basis for our societies. This is where we sort of started to build ourselves as human communities in a real sense. We started to create a culture, and agriculture was the first culture that we really created. Now, we all know that the problem with the agriculture today is that instead of giving back to the soil, we extract from the soil. And that's why we are suffering the loss of the living soil all around the world. Now, in the future, we start to deal with this soil that gives us so much, gives us the food, builds up this huge business and industry, which is more than 5 trillion today, that we start to deal with this source that is so important for our human communities in such a way that we actually replenish the soil. We regenerate the soil. And we actually know quite a lot of that already, but we need to still to explore. But spreading this on the global basis would give us a much more fertile soils, much better food, much happier farmers, much happier consumers, much healthy environment, less carbon in the atmosphere, all that. So the soil, how we deal with that on the global basis, that's a part of the bio age. That's a part of the bioeconomy or biosociety, however you put that. So these four aspects will build the next technological leap. Because, you know, technology is not about the gadgets only. Technology is anything that we create to extend our human capacity. So technology is actually very broad concept. And ancient Greeks actually thought that techne, which is the origin of the world, is not only about how to make things functional and how to create machinery, but it's also something to do with the beauty. So with BioAge, I hope we also will be creating technology that is beautiful, not only functional, but beautiful, and in that beautiful sense also very ethical. The next technology leap, as you see by now, is not only about seeing, okay, this or that type of technology will be the next step. There is a logic here, and the logic is that there is a need. There is a need to heal our relationship with nature, and that need directs our intention. It has started to work so, but there is a long way to go, because we need time to build this capacity to use that technology, to spread the technology on the global basis, and thereby to create a new society.